yes, a few points about how we're organising it. I'll mention that it's being recorded, and we're going to be able to share that on the YouTube channel when the communications team from the Third Age Trust are able to put it there. Whenever it's there, it may be a little bit of a while to wait, but we'll put a link on the Facebook page so that you know about it. If you don't want to be seen on screen, then you can just turn off your video, and that might help improve your bandwidth as well. During Nick's presentation, you'll all be muted, so we won't be disturbed by your unexpected phone call or, you know, dog barking or whatever it might be. If a question occurs to you during the presentation, you can type it into chat, and I've put this in the chat as well for you to see. If you precede it with 3 question marks, it makes it much easier for the team to pick out the things that are actual questions and distinguish them from comments. And then at the point where Nick is actually answering somebody's question, if you've got something else that's directly related, and I'll stress the directly, to that particular one that's being answered at the time, then we'd like you to use the raise hand feature that's in reactions on your Zoom menu, and that will bring you up to the front bit of the queue, the front bit of the screen, so that we can see who's wanting to ask something directly related there. And that means it helps to keep, you know, the topic together rather than having sort of this and then up to that and then back to this again. Just seems to work a little bit better. So we are recording already, I believe. And the first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to ask Mike if he would please do the disclaimer notice, which the Third Age Trust have asked us to do at the start of each of our sessions.
Okay, you should all be able to see the disclaimers that are on the screen now. The terms of reference for the help and discussion drop-in sessions on Zoom. This drop-in session is provided with the intention of members coming together to share knowledge, experience and best practice on various aspects of technology, including software, which is of interest to U3As and their members. We are unable to offer one-to-one advice to U3As and the members, as all locations and abilities differ, and operational decisions need to be made by the individual U3As or their members. Items of equipment or software shown or listed in these sessions are there to give an idea of what may be needed and the approximate cost. It is not to be treated as a recommendation or that it is the only suitable piece of equipment or software. What you may decide to purchase is for you or your own U3A to choose based on available funds and your own particular needs. This session is being recorded for future sharing by the Trust to the U3A community and others with a published link. If you do not wish your face to appear in the edited video, please ensure that your Zoom video setting is set to off. And if you choose to unmute yourself, please note that sounds or speech may also trigger your voice, image, or name on screen, which are likely to appear in the final recording. If this concerns you, please exercise your right or your choice to leave the session so that you don't appear in such videos. Any questions that you may have can be raised in the Zoom chat and may be relayed by a member of the LTT team to the participants. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And I see that Vivek is here now, so perhaps this would be a good point to go with the polls. That would be all right with you, Vivek?
Sure. Which poll would you like me to start with? The website software one, or?
Yes, please.
Yes, I think so. I think that's
okay.
Useful.
So I think people should be seeing this
one
about which.
Yeah, people are answering. Good. Seems to have stabilized there.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to close it now. The vast majority are users of Site Builder, and then a small proportion a WordPress or something else. So that's the status. I'll just share them. To you, Kathy.
Yeah, thank you. Cheers.
Would you like me to do the next one on the role of people?
Yes, please.
So this one's just trying to understand what kind of hats people wear. Okay, we've almost got to 96%, so I'll close the poll and people can see the results. Last 80% plus are wearing some kind of web hat, and then 2/3 are committee members.
Right, thank you.
Do you want me to just check how familiar people are with WordPress?
I think that would be useful, yes.
We're just trying to get a baseline, so sorry, so many polls at the beginning. Okay, so I'm just going to share the results, but it looks like almost half the people are not familiar with WordPress, and about 10% are very familiar with it. And the rest are somewhere in between. And I think I'll do the last poll for now, just so we get an idea of how people heard about us, so that we understand better how to publicize ourselves and reach out in new ways. Okay. I'll just share the results, but it looks like the Facebook group is the most popular, and we'll need to find ways of making use of the other channels. Back to you, Kathy.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so we'll move on and introduce and welcome our guest speaker this afternoon, Nick Talbot, who is from the SiteWorks development team. In fact, the team leader on there, and will be able to tell us where they are, what they're doing, and share a live demo of how the thing works at this stage. So over to you, Nick. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Kathy, for the introduction, and good afternoon, everybody. Yes, my name is Nick Talbot. I'm from Landrindod, Wells U3A. For those of you who don't know where that is, you put an X through Wales, then we're pretty much where the two lines intersect. It's known for its reservoirs, And it happens to be one of the rainiest places in the UK, which is why the water reservoirs are built there. Anyway, enough on the weather. It's lovely and sunny here at the moment. I got involved in this project round about a year ago when I was approached by a guy called Mike Christie, who may be known to some of you, who had been saying to the Trust for a while, look, it's about time we looked at a replacement for SiteBuilder. And those of you who may know and have worked with SiteBuilder for a long time will probably know Susan and Richard, who are the people who did the original development work on it, and amazingly have been supporting that now ever since it went live. And they've done an absolutely fantastic job. Susan is now approaching her 80s, and she and Richard quite rightly said, look, it's about time we retired properly from this. And so my initial work was to work with people in the Trust to come up with some proposals for the way forwards. And there's a lot of debate about IT, as I'm sure you're aware, a lot of debate about whether Beacon is the right kind of system, how to replace SiteBuilder. But a view, I think quite rightly, was taken, we can't go replacing all the IT systems in one go. It's very important that we replace SiteBuilder so that we can allow Richard and Susan to retire. And we need to put in place a platform which is going to give us some kind of flexibility for the future. And that led us to putting a proposal to work on WordPress. There's around about 135 U3As in the UK already using WordPress. So after SiteBuilder, it is the most commonly used system. And it's one which I moved my own U3A on about 3 years ago. So had the experience of moving from a different system onto SiteBuilder. Anyway, around about a year ago, a small team of us were assembled. Initially, there were 5 of us with experience of running WordPress sites with a range of U3A sizes. Mine was at the smaller end. We have about 250 members, going up to Sheffield with over 2,000 members. So quite a range, some rural like myself, some urban like Mike, London-based. And I think what is interesting is from the outset, it was very clear that there's no kind of one size fits all in terms of getting the requirements for what a U3A needs in terms of their websites. Nonetheless, we started sketching out some ideas. And as I say, initial team of 5 of us put together some mock-ups to say, well, this is the kind of thing that we could do. Some of you may know that round about that stage, there was an internet forum set up called the U3A WordPress Development Forum. And that's where a lot of the early discussion on the work took place before it was a formal project of the Trust. That point came, I think if memory serves, around about September last year. It was actually decided this is the direction of travel, and the Trust set it up as a formal project under Alan Russell as the chair. And we now have a volunteer group of something like 60 to 65 U3A members who are working on the project. We have been through an alpha release. We are coming to the end of our kind of beta release, and during this month, I expect we'll get to a release candidate. And so what I'm going to show you now is the result of something which has been evaluated, tested, discussed, probably by in excess of 100 U3As. But that doesn't mean it's perfect yet. I'm sure it's not. And I think what we imagine is something which is going to evolve over time, something which, as we get more and more U3As using it with different ideas, we're going to get feedback that's going to take us down a different route. Anyway, I'll now go and I'm going to demonstrate what SiteWorks currently comprises. And it was very useful to have those polls to start with, because I now have a flavour for how many of you know WordPress and how many of you are newcomers to it. Anyway, I'm going to share a screen with you now. I'm going to share a desktop, and I hope it's going to be a size that's going to work for you. What I suggest is when you're viewing, pop this up full screen, particularly if you're working on a laptop, so that you can see the screen as large as you can. Okay, now I'm going to be demonstrating this on a system that's running locally on my desktop computer, and I'm going to be using something called Local WP. And Local is an application which anybody can download. It's freely available. It runs on Windows or on Mac, or as I am here, running on Linux. And it allows you to set up WordPress sites and run them without the need for a website. What it basically does is it puts all the software you need to run WordPress onto your computer and manages it for you. And so and as you can see from here, you can set up lots and lots of sites. So I've got numerous test websites available. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a demonstration based on what we call our beta demo. This is something which is available for you to download. All the download links are on the U3A WordPress development forum, and you can have a copy of and play with this, exactly what I'm showing you today. So it's something which we would encourage you to do, particularly if you're new to WordPress or want to play with WordPress without wrecking anything. You can work on this on your desktop without doing any work. Now, what I'm showing you here is the front end of the website, and let me show you some of the features of it. You'll notice the colors. We have something called a theme in WordPress, which means we can follow the brand guidelines in terms of preferred colors and fonts and so on. But the content of the pages is totally down to you. So although I'm showing you this particular page that looks like this, unlike Site Builder, there is nothing which locks the page content into looking any particular way. You can use any page layout you like. You can use any page components you like. It's really down to you. And in the demonstration site, what we do is we put a little comment at the bottom of the page, which tells you a little bit about how this particular page was produced. And I'll show you more about that in the future. So it's one of the great opportunities with WordPress is you can actually do something about the presentation. You can make your site look absolutely unique if you so wish. And you've got a site which not only looks good on a desktop screen, but if I just simulate the look on a mobile, so we'll change that. So if you're working on a mobile, then you've got a menu, and you'll notice that the page layout has automatically flowed itself to fit the available space. Everything resizes and plays around with itself so that it works well. If you're on a tablet, well, that's fine. It'll look good on a tablet as well. But again, you'll notice, particularly on these sliders, that things like the image proportions, that's all taken care of you by WordPress. You don't have to do anything in order to do that. It's really down to you to design the site the way you want. Now, within Site Builder, there are a number of features which are specifically for U3As. It's not a common requirement on websites, but it's very important for us. And the prime in those is the ability to handle groups. And so we have a session here which allows you to define groups, and I'll show you how this works in the background in a second. But basically, it allows you to display a list of your groups. We're used to this on Site Builder, of course. But we've got some various facilities here which are more advanced than with Site Builder. So, for example, particularly if you're a large U3A with lots of groups, you can categorize your groups. You can invent your own categories. But I've got some various categories here: art, general history, natural history, etc. You can define whatever categories are relevant for your 3A. You can sort by meeting day. So you can say, I'm only interested in groups that meet on a particular day of the week. Or if it's relevant for you, you can sort by venue. So you can say, well, I'm looking for something that's close to me. And if you categorized your groups by venue, then that thing might be helpful for you. Having got your list of groups, you can then drill down into a particular group, and you can say, okay, I'm interested in art history. And there's very much as with Site Builder, really, there's some structured information about the group, which I'll show you later. But then the way the page is laid out and the content of the group page, it's very much down to you to decide what content you want to appear on a group page. And again, that doesn't have to be a one size fits all. If one particular group wants to have a particular layout and another group wants to do something completely different, that's perfectly viable. So handling groups is one of the key things that the software does for us. The other thing that it does, of course, is handle events for us. And so I've got just on the demonstration system, there's just a short a set of events here. But it basically, very similar before, you get a timetable here, but then you can drill down into the individual event. So I can look at the particular details of an event. And if I want to drill down into the location, well, we also maintain information about venues. So again, on this demonstration system, there's no detail, but if you want to, you could put all the details about the hotel, you could drop a map in, it's very much down to you. You're not stuck to the standard ways in which we list things. So this particular display here is generated by a standard block. It's something which we've written, it's called a U3A event list, very imaginatively. But the thing about WordPress is that you can set layouts to look anything the way you want them. And it's not for beginners, but as soon as you're comfortable with WordPress, you can start looking at what's called the query loop in WordPress. And this allows you to to choose some options where you can say, I want you to give me a list of all of these type meetings. I want you to put a picture here. I want you to put an extract and so on. And this is therefore not a preset layout. It's just a layout that I choose to demonstrate. So if you wanted to set up a different format, it would be perfectly straightforward to do so. So again, it's really just illustrating that there's no particular set layout of the pages. It's down to you to decide the content. And again, you can add as many pages as you like. You can have, I haven't on this particular site, but if you want to add sub-menus to your menu, you can certainly do that kind of thing. And something that we're not used to on SiteWorks, Site Builder, is you've got a search facility, which will allow you to search for information. Right, so that's a little overview then of what the front end of the website looks like. So what I'm going to quickly do is just going to remind you that when you've logged in to edit your Site Builder site, this is the kind of thing that you get. You get an administrative page with a menu down the side here. You choose menu entries. So for example, if you want to work on a page or a group, you choose that particular thing. So you'd say a page, you'd say you wanted to edit a page, and then you'd go and choose that particular page, and then you'd go and edit it. Similarly with groups, if you wanted to edit an existing group or add a group, you go to the appropriate page in the menu, and you'd then go through and you'd add the information. Okay, so I'll leave that in the background for now. Let's instead, what I'm going to do quickly is switch to the administration. So this is the admin interface of WordPress. I'm logged in as an administrator, so I see absolutely everything. You'll be familiar with the idea that on Site Builder, you can have users with different capabilities. You can have your page editor, your site editor, and your administrator, and they all see different menus. So at the moment, I'm working as administrator, and I get a very full menu down the side here, and I get all the kind of information that WordPress wants to provide me. But when it comes to actually working on a page, I would do the same kind of things I did with Site Builder. So I'd go into the Pages menu, and that will give me a list of pages. And the front page of the website that I demonstrated to you is the welcome page. So to edit that page, I'd click on it here, and then that takes me into the page editor for the welcome page. And what you'll notice here, and this is the kind of the total shift from Site Builder, is that WordPress offers you this totally graphical environment for editing. It's kind of WYSIWYG. And if you want to edit you just go and click and so on. So if we want to change text, we can just change by typing in. My typing always goes to pot when I'm demonstrated. But you can just edit your text there. You can move text around. You can bold text very much the same way that you would do in a word processor. If you want to change a picture, then you can choose a picture, and I can say, okay, that particular picture that's been sitting there for a little bit of a time. So I could either upload a picture, or I could go to my existing range of pictures and say, well, actually, that's the one that I'm using at the moment. But let's put a picture of our walking group on the front page instead. And so we'll choose that picture. If I want to change the size of it relative to the text, then I can just drag and increase and play around. It's a very visual environment, is the point that I'm making. So having done that, let's just for tidiness put that back at the same point as the other one. That looks a little bit tighter. Having made my changes there, so I've changed a bit of text, I've changed the picture, then I'll choose update. And if we go back to the front end of the website, so I've got this open in a separate tab. Let's go back to the welcome page, and then we've got our picture. And you'll notice here that we've got it trimmed to fit. I haven't had to think about making that fit. I just chose the picture, and WordPress copes with how it works. But it's also got some very interesting features as well. So again, lots of lovely features in WordPress. I'm not going to be able to show you them all, but for example, it has a focal point picker. So if really what's important to me is to always have those faces in view, then I put my focal point somewhere here, so that whenever WordPress changes the way the picture is used to fit it to a phone or a tablet or whatever else, it will keep that area there in focus as much as it can do. So when it's cropping it, it'll update the pictures that way. So if we go back to the front end of the page now, that's how it was. Because I've changed the focal point, when I refresh, you'll see that image has just moved a little bit slightly. And again, if we were looking at that picture on a tablet or a mobile or something like that, then again, you can see how the reformatted picture is maintaining that idea that I want to keep that focal point on that particular part of the page. Anyway, we'll leave that for now. So the editor is a very graphical editor, and all of this page here is standard WordPress, just by adding standard WordPress content elements and typing them in. There's nothing specifically SiteWorks about this page, apart from this little bit here, which is a special custom SiteWorks block, and it says this is a placeholder where the latest notice will be shown. If I flip back to the front end of the website, you can see we've got this little block of information here. And this is what we call dynamic content in WordPress. In other words, rather than it being static fixed text, which this is, this bit is the result of some kind of database query in the background, which is pulling up the latest notices. And the observant of you may have noticed, if I go back to the dashboard here, that we've got a section called notices where we can add notices. So notices are kind of analogous to the notice facility in Site Builder, but with a little bit more capability in that notices can have complete pages of information relating to them. Anyway, I mentioned groups as being probably the most important feature to support in U3As. And so a lot of work has gone into the support for groups and how we provide facilities for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you firstly an existing group. I think we went to the art history page, and again, it's the same kind of thing, that the art history page has some content which you can edit, and it also has a couple of custom blocks on it. This first one shows you where the block of information will be displayed for the group. So if I actually look at the relevant page on the website, let's go to the art history page. So we can see here that this page includes a block, which is totally up to you, and this little block of content here. So going back to the editor, that's the bit you can edit. That's the WYSIWYG editor. You can do whatever you like. You can put any text you like there. Down at the bottom here, we've got the structured information. And this is the information which we use, particularly when we're producing lists of groups, so that we can sort them by meeting day, because we can say, yes, this particular group meets on a Monday or a Tuesday. It's where we can associate a meeting with a venue, so that a group with a venue rather, so that we can show you the venue that belongs to group. We can associate group leaders, email addresses, optional cost information, and so on. Now, I'm showing you a relatively simple version of this screen here. Some U3As want to collect a lot more information. Some U3As want to be able to have multiple group leaders. Some want to be able to associate tutors with a group and so on. And so within the groups, we have a settings with a U3A settings, which allows you to do that kind of thing. So if you actually want to have 2 leaders for a group, you can do that. If you want to show a tutor for a group, you can do that. If on principle you never have costs, you can take out the costs field. So all of these kind of things are the kind of thing that you can change. So I'll just save this setting showing a second leader so I can show what you mean. So you can customize this to meet the needs of your U3A. So within this page now, we've now got the facility to put a second group leader in. So let's say it's Mary and Mike are the leaders that work with this particular group. So that's, and if I update that information, then that updates the group information over on the website. I'm now going to take you through the process of adding a completely new group so we get a better feel for it. So I'm going to create a landscape history group. So let's create a landscape history group. And the minimum that I need to do is pop this in, and we'll call this a natural history group, and set its status. And that's really the minimum that I need to do. I can just hit the create button now, but it probably makes more sense to say, well, actually this meets on Wednesday mornings, and it meets monthly. And if you want to, you can put additional text. While we were doing the development work, we had lots of brainstorming around the idea of saying, I want to be able to say it meets on the second Wednesday, or it meets on alternate months, or whatever else have you. We thought it just best to give you a narrative for precision here. So you can put additional text to say anything you want here. So if you want to say meets occasionally, or whatever else, you don't have to use these preset ones. You can leave those out, and you can put ever what's appropriate for you. You can choose a venue, again, optional. Let's say that this meets in the sports centre, and you can associate a group leader with it, or so on. You can put costs, etc., etc. And that's the basics of a group. So if we publish that group and we go and view that particular group page now, okay, it's there, the basic information is there, so we can go to our groups table, our landscape history group is there, we can view by category, and we've got our landscape history group is now popping up there. We can view by venue, and we can go and find our landscape history at the sports centre and so on. But it's not a very pretty page. So what I'm going to do now is going to go through how you would edit this particular page. So I'm going to say, here's one I've prepared earlier. So as I said, my typing always goes to pot when I'm demonstrating it. So I've just got a little bit of cut and paste text, and I'm going to pop that in there. Let's paste that information in there. And I also want to put in some pictures. And as we've seen, WordPress is very capable when it comes to adding pictures, but there's a very nice facility which is called the gallery. And in this case, I'm going to, let's quickly find my pictures again. I'm going to just move some of these pictures in, and very, very easy. It's just drag and drop, and you can just carry on doing that. And you can put as many pictures you like in. I think for this demo, I'll stop with 3. And you can see here, we've got, again, all kinds of facilities. I'm going to choose the gallery and say I want to link this to a media file, but you can see at the side here I can say if I want them arranged in columns of 2, or if I want a big single gallery of pictures, you've got that kind of control there. If you want to put captions on, you can go to the individual space, you can put your alt text, you can put your captions, anything else you like. You've got all kinds of additional settings which you can play with. You can put borders on images of any color you like. You can radius the corners. So if you want to do crazy things with your images, you've got a host of options which I'll leave you to explore in your own time. But basically, it's very easy to work with, as you can see. So having saved that, if we go back to our group now and refresh that, then we've got our nice tidy page, and we've also got a light show which allows us to zoom in and view the images. So all this kind of stuff just comes as part and parcel of the way that WordPress works. So that's editing and adding a single group. You'll notice that I've referred to venues and contacts, and venues and contacts are both, they work in a very similar way. So we can add contacts for groups, or we can maintain group contact information. And again, this is all entirely optional. It's down to you to put as little or as much information. Probably the minimum is the name and the email address. A phone number, it's up to you. If you don't want to be able to use phone numbers on the websites, don't put them in there, and it avoids any potential GDPR issues, but the facility is there if you wish to do so. And talking about contacts, if we go back to the page, we've got Stuart Hughes here, and Site Builder, as you know, has a kind of a contact facility. And again, this is part and parcel of the way that we've built the SiteWorks modules to work as well. So you can click on one of the contacts and it'll take you then to a form which will generate the standard type of contact email where you can put your information in. You can say your name, email address, and send a message, etc., etc. Debug. So no need to expose email addresses on the website. You can hide them away in the same way that Site Builder lets us do. Okay, going back to the administration interface then, there's quite a lot of other facilities lurking around here, which probably, having been talking now for probably just well over 20 minutes, that's probably a good point to stop and say that, you know, I'll now perhaps deal with some of the questions that have been popping up. But just really to add here that there's quite a lot of settings that we put in here to give you a little bit of control over the way things look and the way things work, what facilities you want for particular administrators. So you've seen the groups page. If you don't call your group leader a group leader, but you call them a facilitator or something like that, you can define the term there and that facility will be used everywhere. If you don't like the term category and you want to use the term faculty, you can use those terms. We provide you with two basic ways for looking at groups. So if I just basically show you this and save the settings, let's go back to the groups list on the website. So you can instead have something where you get a drill down by the letter of the group or by the category of the group, rather than seeing the sort by list. It's what we call the filtered view. So you can see the natural history groups and it'll just give you a list of the natural history groups and so on. So there are different ways in which you can use this information. It's worth adding as well that, you know, if you want to change the presentation of all this little lot, let's go to the groups page. So the groups page is a regular page like anything else, but let's suppose we actually want that block to be shown with a yellow background. Then what I can do is I can put a group around it, and on the group settings I can say that I want a nice U3A orange background or something like that, and let's put plenty of padding around it so it looks nice as well, and we'll update that page. And if we do a quick refresh now, then we've got a different look and feel. This is all very much, as I say, down to you to choose, you know, what kind of look you want for your website. So let's pop out of that. Other than that, the sections down at the bottom here are standard WordPress elements. So there's a section here called the appearance section, which is where you can go in and totally change the look and feel of the website. There's the users section, which is where you define which users you want on your website. So at the moment, there's just me and a test user called Fred, who's an author, but you can add new users. And you'll notice that there's a very standard way of working with all of these elements. You know, the menus have a very standard look and feel. There's all kinds of tools, settings available. There's the WordPress settings themselves where you can fine tune the way your website works. In most cases, you wouldn't need to play around with these. And the other thing to add is that there's a nice facility for managing all the media, and media relates to the images or the documents or whatever else that you've put in here. So you've got facilities in here for looking at them, but you've also got even facilities in here for editing. So if you want to crop or rotate your images or do anything like that, you've got basic image editing facilities all built within the standard facilities within WordPress. I think at that point, I think perhaps, John, Kathy, that might be a good point to pause the demonstration and see if there are any questions that you think we ought to be picking up in the chat.
Okay, thank you, Nick. We've got a serious number of questions in the chat, and I'll try and put them together into chunks so that we can answer a number in one go. And I think the first batch was obviously about groups, and so I'll run through. There's one about Beacon, which I think Mike Field has commented on, which is probably not totally related. But if we look at things like, can events be listed under the group?
Yep, that's a very good question. Shall I answer that straight away? Because
yeah, please.
That is a standard facility. I'm going to have to go. I'm sure we've got. Well, I tell you what, we had the art history group, didn't we? I'm going to briefly set up an event for that group. So let's say it's going to be a workshop of some sort, and that's all I'll do for that. Event category is, it's going to be it is a workshop, and the group that it relates to is the art history group. I'll put in an event date, and I'll put in a 9:30 time or something like that. Start, and we could go through. We can say it's organised by Mary. We could choose a venue. So that's basically, and let's say that booking is required for this particular one. So that creates an event. So if we go to the events list, then you'll see that we've got our workshop is there listed, and it's in the art history group. If we now go to the art history, you'll see that it's actually popped up as a forthcoming event related to that group. So yes, that facility is there. Any events related to the group will automatically pop up under the group page. And if you don't like them there and you want them to the top, you just change the position in the group page. So if we go back to the group page, and if we go to our art history page, and you can see at the moment, this is the pattern. These blocks are all in whatever sequence you want them to be. So we've got an events list block, we've got a group data block, but if I want this event to go up at the top, I can drag it. So I'm just dragging it in this panel at the side so that it appears at the top of the page. You can also use these buttons to move the thing up and down within the page, but for moving it a big way, I find it easier to use the side here. But if we want the events up at the top of the page, then we'll save that, and let's go and have a quick look at that page. So we can see now we've got our forthcoming events up at the top, and then our block is at the bottom. So you've got a lot of control as to the way that you do it. And if you feel that this information isn't helpful, you can just remove the block on that page. You know, again, it's totally down to you. You can have a group page which is totally has the content that you want. You don't have to use any of our kind of predefined content.
Okay, so once the event has passed, does it automatically vanish? Is one of the other questions.
Yes, it does.
Fine. Okay.
It's still available. You can delete it as an administrator, or you can leave it and display it as an archive of past events. That's really your choice.
Okay, fine. And obviously we're looking at some point we'll come on to if information can be integrated with Beacon in terms of can information be loaded across from Beacon. Have that one in the back of your mind for a minute. One of the questions was, can groups be in several categories? I think you've demonstrated that can. Yes.
At the moment, you can define as many categories as you like, but at the moment we set it up so that a group belongs to a single category.
Okay.
It was me that asked that question. Can you just clarify? That is a major problem for us. We have members who might want wheelchair accessible and a science group, science-based group. We can't do that in this system. Is that correct?
I guess what you could do is you could put your accessibility information elsewhere, but you would want to search by access facility, would you?
What ideally there would be several tick boxes, and you'd say, I want something on a Tuesday that's art-based and that is at a wheelchair accessible centre.
Right. Are you one of the people who's part of the SiteWorks development team?
I'd love to be.
In that case, Alan Russell is listening in on this. He might private message you and tell you how you can become involved.
Yes, please.
Because it's useful to have that kind of feedback from people with use cases we haven't thought about.
I would say we are trying to become more disability aware. So we're trying to let people select for, we've got a hearing loop, we've got wheelchair access, etc.
Thank you. That was Sue Foy from Chester U3A, who's a regular on the Tech Talk team. But yes, Alan Russell, if you want to reach out, you can get to through the Facebook group at U3A Let's Talk Tech. Can I move on, because there's obviously a lot of content and questions coming through. If we look at let's say where you are currently with any links into and out of Beacon that could be automatically used in the site builder, is that planned, or is there any sort of progression towards it at the moment?
It's obviously been one of those things, but Beacon is very important. There are something like 500 U3As using it, and almost half of the U3As that use Site Builder also use Beacon. So it has been an issue. I think the concern for us is that the urgency has been to be able to close down Site Builder so that Susan and Richard can retire. And therefore, phase one is very much, let's get people onto WordPress. Now, WordPress is a very flexible platform. And if I talk about the situation, for example, in Australia, where the U3A in Australia has moved onto WordPress, they actually, in their setup, they have 3 different plugins. I'll talk about plugins in a little bit. I'll perhaps have a more technical side of this. And there are 3 membership management systems commonly used in Australia. And therefore, the U3A has the choice of choosing which particular plugin they want to use so that their membership management system can, quotes, talk to WordPress. Now, at the moment, we know that some U3As are maintaining their group information, particularly in 2 locations. One of the things which we'll be offering with the release version of SiteWorks is a comma-separated file import, so that if you only have your group information at the moment sitting within Beacon, you can export that data, if necessary, edit it, and then you can import a comma-separated file, and it will automatically create groups for you. That's early days, and that's about the only provision at the moment. There are discussions starting to take place, and I don't know whether Alan Russell would like to come in and comment on this. It's an issue which, is very important to the Trust's digital strategy. And clearly, at some stage, we're going to be wanting to look to reduce and hopefully eliminate that kind of duplication of having to log into 2 systems to maintain information, particularly relating to groups. Now, certainly, just to be very clear, there is no integration with Beacon in the first release of SiteWorks.
Okay, one pertinent one is actually, obviously you've got links where people can send an email through to a group leader or other people that are named in the SiteWorks system. And one of the questions was, is it sort of linked to a webmail system, and does it allow for sending of photographs?
Right. A quick answer to that: no, it's very much like the Site Builder system. It's not pure email. It just allows you to send a message which goes via email to the recipient. Yeah, Alan, can we bring Alan in? I think he's got his hand up.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to say 30 seconds. We are talking to Beacon. I've recently been talking to a joint meeting between Beacon and SiteWorks. We know it's a problem. I've spent years now in a U3A that has both Beacon and Site Builder, and frustrated about the overlap. So we do want to fix it, but as Nick said, the priority was just getting people off of Site Builder.
Thank you very much, Alan. That's great. The other thing, one question was that if you've got developing a page, someone was saying about is it's possible to work on the page without it being published and save it without it being published.
Yes, absolutely. So if we go back to the system here, on pages can have a number of statuses. So you can, for example, have the page as published, in which case it's visible. You can have it pending review. So if you want to have a work process where you have somebody who creates a page but can't publish them, you can set that up and you can flag it as something that's pending review, or you can say it's draft, and when it's draft, it won't appear on the website.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other things related to, somebody was asking about, is the font fixed for the theme you're using, or can we have different fonts on a page?
Right. Within the standard system, we make it very easy for you to just use the default font. But this is WordPress, so you can to a great extent do what you like. So if I just put, let's just add a new paragraph in here. Oh, in fact, actually, if we look here, this particular font is using something called Merriweather. What we've provided as standard is the standard U3A font, but we've also provided a font called Bitter, which looks like that. And we've provided with a font called Merriweather, which has a really nice italic font, which is, shall I say, a lot nicer than the standard font. So if we put that into italic, you can see that I like a more cursive italic, and so Merriweather italic is a nice finish. Now, as out of the box, let me just undo those changes for now. Out of the box, we just provide you, therefore, with these three fonts: the standard U3A font, Bitter, and Merriweather. Now, there are I haven't talked about plugins. That's maybe something I'll talk about in a sec, John. But there are plugins which make it very easy for you to use any of the Google fonts, for example. All you need to be aware of are issues relating to GDPR and using fonts which are not hosted locally on your website, which might involve tracking.
Okay. One of the other things was, are you able to demonstrate what different user permissions, like, for example, other than the administrator, would be able to see?
Yeah, of course. So if I leave this page now, if I log out as myself, if you remember, there was a dummy user in there called Fred. Oops, I might even spell it properly. And if I can remember the dummy password that I gave them, yeah, okay. So Fred is an author. So Fred sees a reduced option. So you'll see that U3A settings aren't there, and none of the U3A control settings are here. So we can go to the Pages menu, and Fred can see pages, but he's got no facility for editing them. He can go into groups, and he can see groups. Oh dear, he's got no facility for editing them, and so on. So what you would need to do, you can see all of these belong to a particular user. So in order to give Fred a privilege to edit an existing group, then I'd actually, as the administrator, I'd go and say, this is Fred. So what I'll do is I'll briefly, let's do that now. If I do, oops, I need to close that all. Let's go back in as the administrator and go in. Here's our user called Fred, who's an author. So what I'll do is I'll take one page, and let's say we've got a page, I think the About page was in the menu. So what I'm going to do is quickly change the ownership of that page to Fred. So here the author is now Fred, and I'll update that. So I'll now log out again as the administrator. We'll come back in as Fred. 1, 2. Missed it.
Still have more.
And come back in. And if we go into the pages menu now, Fred has now got the ability to edit this page, and we'll take over that editing because I left the folder. So Fred's now got the ability to edit this particular page, but not the other pages. So yeah, and it's the same kind of thing with groups that if you make Fred the author of a particular group, then he can go and edit that group page, but not otherwise.
Okay.
Alan Nolan has a hand up. Is that directly related to this one?
Yeah,
Alan?
I noticed Fred, although he couldn't edit groups, it looked as though he could add a group. Is that right?
At the moment, yes, it is, but I think that's something which we need to change in the author privileges. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, Nick, so there's one of the questions that are quite interesting is somebody wants to add a document for viewing on a page. Is there any sort of integrated plugin or something you're using to display, for example, a PDF or a document that people could see on a particular page if they go to the website?
Yes, so let's actually add something. Let's go to that About page, and let's suppose what we want to do is we've got a membership form or something like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So actually the way I'm going to do this first is I'm going to go to the media, because it's a good way of showing you the media library. And let's just see if I can find from my own U3A. Sorry, I'm on another desktop for a sec. And let's go to 120. Right. Right. So basically what I'm doing is I'm dragging from another window the membership application form. So what we want to do is we want to add a link on a page to that particular document. So let's now go to the pages, go to the About page, and I'll say, let's at this point here say, we're going to say, I could put a button. Let's do something like that. So we'll put some buttons in here, and we'll say download application. Oops. Something like that. And what I've got to do now is I've got to associate that button with the application form. Now, what I need to do now is search for the document, and you can see how the searching searches all of the media files, and it says, yeah, that's the one that we want. So we can say, yep, that'll do the job there. That's fine. So that's now a button. So if we update that, and let's go and view the page on the front end of the website. So what we've now got is a link to the application form, and then that's whatever that document is, it carries on doing. Is that the kind of thing, does that respond to the question?
So it does in a way, I mean, that presumably links out to a new tab on your browser.
Again, that's down to you. When you set this up, you can either set it up so that it opens in a new tab. That's a tick box option on the settings of the button here. So you've got all kinds of options that you can play around with.
And if you wanted to display it actually rather than just use the button underneath there,
right,
and then possibly print it or save it from having looked at it, is there a plugin you use for that?
You would need an additional plugin if you wanted like a thumbnail of the document. Yeah, no, that's not a standard WordPress feature, but I know the kind of thing you mean, and you could use a plugin to achieve that.
Fair enough. Okay, that's getting probably too technical for some, but at least there's a question there. Somebody else was asking about whether you're likely to include a booking system for events. I know you said there was things were bookable.
There's a clear strategy in doing the development work, and perhaps this is a good time, John, to talk about the plugins.
Mm-hmm.
So what I always say to people is, when we demonstrate SiteWorks, at least 95% and probably more of it is WordPress, pure WordPress, and there's a little bit that we've added on. And what we want to avoid is a situation where we've got a major software maintenance task ahead of us. We want to take advantage of the fact that we're using a system that we don't have to maintain, WordPress itself, and we'll add a few things on. And WordPress is, in many ways, a framework for making the sort of site that you want. And the reason that WordPress is hugely popular across the internet is that you can add functionality into WordPress to really make it do pretty much what you want. And an online booking system with payments is a pretty common requirement. And rather than us writing something and having to maintain something, the view is that that kind of facility is best provided by taking something off the shelf and plugging it into WordPress. So just to give you a feel for how this works, all of the things on this page are plugins or extensions to the standard functionality that you get out of the box with WordPress. Down at the bottom here are a number of things which we've written because they are necessary, because they're not the kind of thing that anybody else wants. They're something that is very specific to a U3A requirement. So, for example, we've written the contact form module, which works just the way that the site builder form does. Yeah, there are lots of other contact forms on the market. And if you decide that you don't like the way we do it, you can deactivate what we've put and you can plug in a different contact form, which will give you all the bells and whistles that you need. But the system that we've devised is meant to be simple. It's meant to work well with the information that's currently in Site Builder and will be migrated across to SiteWorks. We've then got the core functionality, and as it says here, this gives you, this is the big bit of software which we've developed, which manages the groups, the events, the notices, etc., etc. The dashboard thing is the thing which customizes the dashboard. This is a very small plugin. Its main role is to put that little block of information there, which gives you a link out to the SiteWorks website or to the WordPress development forum. And then there's a little plugin. If anybody has used WordPress, they'll know that its origins are with what they call a blogging platform, where you keep on posting little updates and, you write your daily what I had for breakfast post, and you allow people to comment on it. And all of that is taken out because we frankly don't think all that stuff is relevant in a U3A website. So we've got a little plugin which takes out lots of bits of WordPress which we don't think are appropriate in a U3A setting. But if you want to do all of that little lot as well, you deactivate that. And then you can have comments and you can do all of the things which WordPress does out of the box. As I say, it's a component thing. We've added a few things. Like, for example, I showed you when I was demonstrating the landscape group, how you can get those nice lightbox displays where you click on an image and it enlarges, and that's been done by a particular plugin. We've got another plugin which you won't see, it works in the background, but what it does is, you know how digital cameras and smartphones, when you take a picture, they're usually umpteen megapixels. So you've got an image which is perhaps 6,000 pixels by 4,000 pixels, and it's a huge file. And you upload it to your web server, and you're only going to use it as a little thumbnail that display takes up at the most a quarter of the screen. Well, what Insanity does is it takes those images, and you can change this if you want to, but it basically says, make sure that any images that are uploaded are automatically compressed down to a sensible maximum size so that we don't overload the web server with lots and lots of huge digital camera images. So these plugins are all things which we think are useful to have. That nice flashy slider that you saw on the front page is done by a plugin called Guten Slider, and so on. And this is a security login. This is a bit of background stuff again, which relates to the way which we program those pages. It allows us to do the data entry forms. And this is something which allows you to pull out the custom blocks. But if you want to add a new plugin, what you would do is you would go to the WordPress repository, which currently has around 60,000 plugins to doing all sorts of things. So you mentioned bookings. So maybe you want something, maybe you use Eventbrite and you want a plugin which will let you work with Eventbrite. Well, you've got your pick of a load of them. And you would have to do your research and work out which one gave you the kind of thing that you wanted. But you can see the kind of choice that you've got when you go for WordPress. Now, one of the things that you will find on the U3A WordPress Developers Forum is that a lot of those 135 U3As that are already using WordPress, some of them are using these plugins. And they share their experience to say which ones work, which one fits the way they operate, what the downsides are, the way you can customize them to work. So it's a great platform for sharing experience. Now, at some point, it's possible that the SiteWorks project may very well say, well, okay, we've now got over 100 U3As clamoring for a booking system with payments. Maybe what we'll do is we'll go through the list and we'll do some due diligence and say, well, actually, of all the ones out there, we think this is a good one. And maybe we might take that on as a supported plugin within SiteWorks. In other words, U3As that get stuck could come for us for help on it. Otherwise, you take a plugin, you're on your own, or you use the support forums that are readily available, or you use the U3A WordPress Developer Forum. But I think, again, that's something which we should say. A big part of our SiteWorks volunteer team are gearing up to support with training and support, and they will be supporting on the plugins that are already we have selected and installed for U3As to use. Does that help, John?
I think that does. I've got one that intrigued me a little bit. David Lowe from Sevenoaks says, is there a facility for a concertina? Now, I don't know what he meant by that. I thought he might mean slider, but could you elaborate on that one, David, if you just unmute yourself?
No, I can tell you what that means. You go to lots of websites and they have a facility so that, I'm trying to think of a good example. If you've got a long block of text here, then you can have a lot of bullet points here, and there would be a little arrow or a hotspot, and you click it and it opens up a whole block of text. So you can hide the complexity of a long page with lots and lots of subheadings. We don't provide anything of that as standard. I don't think, again, it's a very good question, because although I use WordPress, I'm not quite sure whether WordPress actually has a concertina block as standard. There are lots and lots of these standard blocks available, but I don't think that a concertina block is a standard.
There's one on our website, Nick.
Yep.
On the SiteWorks website, that's how the FAQs are done.
Oh, you're right indeed. Again, that's using a plugin, isn't it, Alan? I think. Yeah. So I can show you that. Let's go to the SiteWorks website, and that's. Do you know which page that's on, Alan? Out of
that one.
Oh yeah, here we go. So that's a concertina. So you can see what's the project timescales. Click on the button, and it opens up. Now. So that will have been done by searching for a plugin. So that was looking at a different website. That's looking at the SiteWorks website, which is also a WordPress website. But if I go back to my local demonstration website and I go to the plugins, I don't know which particular one that was used, but I can say I'm looking for something which provides a concertina, and it may very well be that. It may be that one. I'm not sure what was used, but you'd basically just say, yes, go away and install that particular plugin and it'll whir and it'll click and it's there and we can activate it. And that is now available to me.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Nick, as far as let's look at security, and also some were asking, well, can we have a private member area on our SiteWorks with individual members having a login status that they can go and access certain parts of the back office there?
Right. Let's put a question to you. Susan and Richard, who run Site Builder at the moment, think that one of the worst decisions that they made was to offer a private area, because their view is that anything that's on the website is something that really should be public domain. Anything which is so private that it can't be seen by the public, you've got to be awfully careful about GDPR. So we know, for example, that many U3As do things like redact their newsletters before publishing them on the website. I'm not a lawyer, but I take GDPR seriously, and I think there's a concern that as soon as you make a facility, people will take risks with it. So the advice, I think, is think very hard about whether you really need that, and whether, if you do need it, is a public website the right place to be having that information. Now, the answer to the question is yes, of course you can. So within your users, if I talk about a new user, WordPress out of the box provides you with a number of standard levels of user. An administrator, an editor, an author, and a contributor all have a login to the back end with degrees of access within the back end. A subscriber purely has a login to the front end of the website. So if you wanted to set it up, say, for example, so that a particular user could access restricted facilities on the front of the website, but wasn't ever going to access the back of the website, you would enter them as a subscriber. And you would then use well, there are lots of ways you can do this. But for example, on this page here, you might very well say, this bit of content is only available to logged in users. If you're not logged in, you'll see this. So WordPress has that functionality. Another thing that WordPress has standard is if you've got a page, take the About page, then one of the things you've got is you can actually say that this is password protected. And you can then, if you want to use very much like Site Builder, use a single shared password to access that page. And that's per page. So it's not per site. It's single secure shared access per page. So again, I'm not saying that it's good practice to do it, but the facilities are there.
Okay. Can we move on? I mean, in terms of one of the things I've noticed is having a WordPress page of our own is the number of people trying to hack your page from all over the globe. And like, for example, they'll all type in administrator and then try and guess your password. Yep. There are certain obviously plugins that allow you to understand what's happening in that regard. What security provisions are being made for the SiteWorks version to try and resist any hacking of your own new website?
Right. Well, there are two answers to that question, really. This is an open source development project as far as the software is concerned. So any U3A is free to use those plugins, choose their own hosting provider, use whichever plugins they like, use the U3A theme if they like it, and host themselves. And in that case, they would need to satisfy themselves that they'd got the right security in place. If I can share something else, the trusters at the moment setting up hosting on a virtual private server, which is provided by a contractor to the trust. And initially, we've sized this to take something of the order of 50 WordPress sites. And so those 50 sites will sit here. Now, those are going to be sitting on a virtual private server, which has firewalling protection around it, which has web application firewalling protection, and also provides a lot of facilities like automatically checking for rogue plugins and that kind of stuff. In other words, there's lots of very specific WordPress protection wrapped around it. So there's no need to take the steps that you would do if you were just on vanilla hosting anywhere else. If you're on vanilla hosting, so for example, on the website that I use two packages. I use WordFence and I use Loginizer, and both of those do things like add additional levels of security above the WordPress additions. The other thing that's worth adding, if I go to a different page here, is that we're going to be using, I show it on here. Oh, yes. The updates for the server are going to be managed by a custom update server, so that plugins will update themselves in the same way that a standard third-party plugin will be updated. But we're looking to deploy a WordPress management tool on those sites that are hosted by the SiteWorks project. And that will allow us, again, to check the security. I mean, that may be a topic, that's a big topic. It may be something for a future Let's Take talk. But suffice it to say that, yes, security there's been a lot of consideration about security. I'm not saying that we have all the answers, but we know the kind of the components of what we need to put in place.
Okay, probably a good link from what you've just shown us there is the whole aspect of the hosting. A couple of questions about the subdomain referencing, what it's like to be called once you have a live site. The cost to U3As is another one, and limit on the total website size for each of the individual U3As SiteWorks websites when they come live.
Right, I think the answer is that those are all very good questions, and because we're feeling our way, we don't know how many simultaneous WordPress sites we can run on a particular virtual private server. So we don't have people in the team who have experience of hosting 700 WordPress websites. So we're starting to feel our way in terms of the capacity and the sizing. And I guess one of the answers is we won't know the cost to the U3A of the hosting until, can we run 50 on the one that we've sized for 50? Can we run 200 on it? Can we only run 25? There's a lot of learning curves work still to be done on. I don't know whether Alan Russell wants to comment any further on that.
Yeah, I'll give you my two penneth. At the moment, the discussion is that as Site Builder goes down, SiteWorks goes up, and right now the intention is to not think too seriously about costing until we've got a much better idea. The virtual private server that Nick is talking about should be capable of being scaled all the way up to the 700. That is the plan. But watch this space.
Okay. I think people are curious about, obviously, time scales for when U3As will be offered the transition. I'm sure that's one that I can't, you're unable to answer at the moment. But obviously, there are some people, particularly on this call, who are keen to get cracking. And obviously, your various releases, is there a trigger point that you have in sight where, and a sort of time scale and how the priority, how you're going about this? Does it depend on purely people moving from Site Builder to SiteWorks? Or if somebody is fairly proficient with WordPress, is there going to be like an empty container site that they can start to work on at an earlier date?
Can I leap in, Nick, or do you want to?
No, you go and I'll follow on.
Okay. The simple answer is, yeah, we're very interested in how long it's going to take as well, and we don't know, because we don't know what we don't know. We have something like 25 U3As either experimented with, lined up, or ready to go. And we intend to practice our migration processes with those U3As as friendly U3As. We anticipate that the first two things we'll do is migrate some U3As, and some U3As will give them what we're going to call a starter site, which is essentially an empty site, because our pioneers have been saying to us, well, actually, I don't really want to migrate. I think I'd just rather restart again. And we're quite comfortable with them doing that. What we'd like is WordPress comfortable people talking to us early on, and we'll start making a list. I anticipate, and I've got my fingers crossed and my toes, we'd like to be able to say that within a few weeks we're going to start migrating our Pioneer sites.
Mm-hmm.
And if what they're doing right now is we're putting our Pioneer sites onto the hosting platform and doing the testing that we can't do until we had the final hosting platform agreed, things like backup and restore, etc.
Whilst you're on that, Alan, I'm going to ask you, someone's asked about analytics. If you were using something like cPanel for WordPress hosting or something similar, you would have access to analytical information about where things are coming from, which parts of your website are popular, etc. You have that currently in Site Builder. What have you got planned for SiteWorks?
Again, it's a work in progress. Certainly, you can see from the diagram that I popped up that cPanel is a standard part of the way that we set up the sites. There's some discussion to be had as to whether it's appropriate to offer the cPanel instance to the individual U3A or whether that's managed as a service. I'm not sure, amongst the technically enthusiastic, then I think offering cPanel is probably a good solution because they can do so much more with it. And as you say, not only in terms of access to the stats, but also to do things like set up email routing, forwarding, that kind of thing. And possibly, using the backup facilities. If people want to take offsite backups, then cPanel is one way of doing it. But there's a debate to be had as to, what is supportable. And there'll be some T's and C's, I'm sure, around that. The other thing to say, sorry, can you get back? What was the question, John? There was something else I wanted to say. Can you repeat it?
Oh, no, you're asking. That was off the top of my head. We're talking about analytics, wasn't I? We talked about cPanel. No, forget it. Can I bring in Mike Field? He has questions about...
It was just a general question about analytics. It wasn't specified.
Yeah.
Ah, right. Yes.
Mike Field from Chorleywood, part of the team. You had a question about top-line menus and various things disappearing as you scroll down the page. Can you elaborate on that one, please, Mike?
Yeah. At the moment, I notice with all of the Third Age Trust websites at the present time, as you scroll down a page, the top line menus disappear off up through the top of the screen. That's a little bit irritating if you've got to keep scrolling up to the top of the page to use that menu. With our website that we set up last year, which is in exactly the same system, very similar to, set up to yours, but we've managed to lock those menu options such as home, etc., so that they are there on as you scroll up. It's a non-movable item, quite deliberately. Do you intend to go that way at all? Well, again, people were very annoyed with it disappearing and slowing down their use of the site.
It's something I've not looked at, and I'm not an expert on the theme side. But let me have a quick look at this, because basically it would be a question of taking the block and making it sticky, wouldn't it? So in fact, it'd be a question of taking that whole header block, wouldn't it? And somewhere in here, I may not be able to find this, but there is a way of making things sticky, isn't there? I'm trying to remember where we see that. No, I can't answer the question. There is as you're talking what they call a sticky block.
Yeah.
And
I can show you what we've done, but if you want to, but if you want to break.
It is a setting. The answer is that it is doable. It's not done in the current theme, but it's a good suggestion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mike. I'm sure that can be shared somewhere else. We'll take it from there. We're rolling on. It's almost 2:25, so we normally wrap up or start to wrap up around about past. In terms of those that already have existing domains, be it org.uk or co.uk, and they've already developed WordPress sites, if they want to, let's say, opt into using SiteWorks as the host, a couple of things. Firstly, is the unique URL system that would be applicable for a SiteWorks site, and how they would go about maintaining their org.uk or whatever it is they have, and still being able to host the website on SiteWorks.
Right. Well, I think the answer to that is so long as they are capable of changing their DNS entries so that they point to the relevant hosting server, then they can keep their existing domain names.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah. So that should be straightforward. John, I appreciate we've only got a few minutes left. One thing that occurred to me is it might be worth showing you the migration process.
Yes, that was the last one I was going to ask you. And in fact, it's a notional 90 minutes. Last time Chris Winner was on for over 2 hours. I didn't want to subject you to that, but obviously we still have 68 out of the people that came on the call, and that was a fair number as well. That was well higher than that. So yes, anything you want to carry on, the time is yours. People can leave as and when they have to. But I have to say that we're all interested and we want to know more. So please keep demonstrating.
Right. Okay. So in that case, what I'm going to do is I'll pick Worcester, and let's go to Worcester 3.
I think that was deliberate, Nick.
Was it? So let's have a quick look at Worcester. Just to remind us of the SiteWorks side. So the steps that we go through when we're working to do some migration work is the first thing we do is we have an arrangement with the site builder server to generate an export file. So let's find it. So that's the most recent one. So what we get is an export file from Site Builder. So when we do a migration, we'll get something fresh from the Site Builder server, and it comes in an XML format. And basically, what it does is it gives us a list of groups, list of events, and anything else. And the anything else includes all of the kind of standard pages. So if I give you for an example of that, if we go into the non-groups folder, then we've got the welcome page, which corresponds to this page on Site Builder. So if I just pop that up, you can see that this is formatted as an XML file, and it tags things in a certain way using XML so that we can see that, we can see the structure of the page. So what we have then is we have an import routine which processes all of these files in turn and imports them into the relevant backend database. So if we then look at what Worcester looks like on the front end, let's have a quick look on here. So let's try and let me just separate this off so we can see the two together. So what you can see we've got the menu structure comes across. So the top end menu items come across as before. We may have to manually tweak these because in Site Builder, you've got a facility for renaming menus anyway. And let's go to the welcome page so that we're comparing like with like. And you can see, let's actually stack these up side by side so that you can see them. Oops. Right, let's get back to that one. Yeah. So what we've got here is you can see we've got the same kind of content, and things like where you had a link to your group news page, you still have a link to your group news page, obviously in a different format. And other than the layout is different, then the information that comes across remains the same. Some things aren't perfect, so the way this table has been rendered is perhaps is going to take a bit of work. But basically the information comes across as before. We've got some issues here. There's an interesting one. This is a site builder issue that where there's an ampersand in a link, site builder doesn't export it at the moment, but we're on to that. You wouldn't believe the amount of fine tuning that there's been on the export process to try and get it as close as we can. But you can see here that there's been zero editing on this page since the importing process. So when the webmaster gets a migrated site, then their task is to then actually have a look at this and say, or if I put that full screen again, is they would then go to the editor and they go into the individual page. So let's go into the welcome page. It's on the next page. As you can see, there's an awful lot of pages came across here. Welcome to West Area Group. So you've then got a standard WordPress page, which you would then tweak and edit, maybe drop some pictures in, do whatever you like. But all of the documents have come across. So if you go into the media file, media gallery, you can see here are all the PDF documents. Here are all the images that are available. So the migration does a very comprehensive job of getting you a site that just wants a little bit of tweaking. In fact, you'd probably, to make it look good, you'd probably want to do more than a little tweaking, but it does come across without you having to do too much work. Anyway, that's probably enough to give you a feel for what the migration process achieves at the moment, but we are steadily improving that. Alan.
Alan has raised his hand.
Thank you. Can I just leap in for a second and talk about Nick's talking about the technical bit of the migration process. We've talked a lot about the fact that this is going to be I'd say 98% WordPress and 2% Nick's code.
Yep.
That means that actually the migration process starts a lot earlier than the technical bit you've just seen. It's going to start with people spending time with workbooks on, that's it, workbooks that are being developed for training about WordPress. The intention is we will go to a U3A, give them the local, give them time to play, give them time to work through a workbook and make them feel comfortable, then give them their website still on local and give them time to play and make them feel even more comfortable. And when they're ready, come to us and say, okay, we'd like to go live. At that point, we do a new migration of their website, put it on the live server, and at that point they can work on it offline in the sense that it won't be visible to the rest of the world, but only to the administrators. Once they're comfortable with it, then somebody, and I'm not sure who is going to be yet, flicks the switch, changes the DNS settings, disconnects the site builder and connects the to the new site. And that could take a day, a week, a month, because we're very, very conscious that different sites have different levels of expertise. You're all here because you're interested. That probably means you're here because you're sad techies like the rest of us. So that
no,
probably
happy techies.
Sorry,
happy techies, I think.
happy techies. Yes, well, and actually,
or geeky techies.
That's the wonderful thing about the SiteWorks team is I think last time I had that discussion, we had 2 professors, more PhDs than you can possibly imagine, and experts in almost every aspect that you could possibly think of. Some of them might be slightly out of date, but actually we've got a lot of expertise and a lot of helpful, sensible people. So what we're aiming to do is produce something that we can give to the site builder user who is just about managing. And once we've got them migrated, fine. So the early ones, please, anyone who's a sad techie and wants to come in and play, talk to us. I won't be unhappy if there are 50 users all sitting there with local, all chomping at the bit. We have set up a system to manage queues, and we are talking to site builder sites. So far, I think we have, of the 700-ish site builder sites, we're short of any contacts for about 100 of them. So we're still working on that. Sorry, Nick, I was just
I was going to say, Alan, Graham Teague, I think, sent out messages to the registered website editors.
Exactly,
this last week, didn't he? And if for anybody who is not yet registered, what would you suggest they do to move things on?
Just go to our site builder site and join. There's a questionnaire that asks who are you and what's your email address and can we get in touch, and not much more than that. Graham is trying to manage the possible lists of names, and there is an awful lot of them. We have lost a few. I'm sure we've lost a few, and I suspect, and I can't prove it, I suspect by the time we get a year downstream, we'll find that there are some moribund sites as well. But we don't know what we don't know.
For those of you that do access the U3A Let's Talk Tech Facebook page, just understand Graham Teague is on there, but that is not the appropriate forum to start banging him with questions and harassing him about anything. He's been very informative in keeping people on the tech team group very well informed as far as he can. So just to say, you are about, and it is another communication channel you're using, as well as obviously using the Beacon emailing.
Similarly, Nick, I know, is very active on the forum, and whilst we try to keep the forum up to date, the place for all our news, as far as we're concerned, is this web page that you're seeing now.
Excellent. So, Nick, do you think you've covered as much as you'd like to? Oh, Kathy's put a hand up, so I'll hand over to Kathy.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about what about U3As who are not site builder users, so would presumably be coming in on the blank version. What would be their position? Our position. If
they come in on the blank version, and they'll get as much help as they need.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Okay, I think we've really got along to a convenient point. I know there were more questions than possibly we've had answers to, but you would be here all afternoon, Nick, and I'd rather that you actually got out to enjoy some of the sunshine at the moment, rather than miss that here in your office. I'll hand back to Kathy, and Vivek, were there any more polls we had in mind? Just let us know that, please.
Right, I'm just briefly showing, for those of you who haven't had a look at it, the WordPress Development Forum. There's something like about, I think we're up to 250 members now, something like that. It's a quick check on that. 239 members. And a lot of information is discovered. And in particular, there's one forum section here called WordPress for U3As. And if you look at that, that'll provide you with all the links you need. You can download all of the plugins that are available, and you've got full instructions for how you can install and run the system locally. So all the information is there. Interestingly, we've got now 2 U3As who are actually using these plugins on live websites independently. So they've decided that the plugins are good enough for them to use and that they're out in the wild.
That's good. And I believe Graham Teague did share a PDF of how you go about setting up local WP and importing the various aspects of the SiteWorks plugins.
That's covered in this guide here. I shared that link around.
Yeah,
and it's very straightforward. It has 4 steps. You install the local software, you download our demo, you start local, and you drag the demos file onto it, and then that's it.
Okay.
It's so straightforward, I can do it.
And that is in the files area of our Facebook page at Let's Talk Tech. So we'll try and make everything available as and when, and Graham's been great in helping us with that. So thank you to him as well as to both of you.
Right. That point.
Okay, Vivek, have you got a couple of final polls that you want to put in?
Yes, so let me just run the two polls that I didn't run at the beginning, which was just to give an idea of the interest in Beacon amongst the people who came for this one. So one is, how many people are using Beacon, just to give a feel for this audience that's remaining now. Okay, so vast majority of the people who are at the end are clearly interested in SiteWorks and Beacon. I'll just share the results, but 5 out of 6 are in that kind of category. And then I'm just going to do the other one, which is to get an idea of the roles of the hats people are wearing in terms of, again, how many of them may be wearing Beacon hats as well as website hats. Okay, I'm just going to share the results, but it looks like kind of half the people are Beacon admin, and then almost the same amount are there as people using it as group leaders or as other committee roles. So they're involved in Beacon as well as obviously interested in what's happening in the SiteWorks. So thank you for that. And we've run some of these polls before, so we'll be able to look at how the audience has changed depending on the nature of the meeting. Back to you, Kathy.
Thank you. Thanks very much, then, particularly to Nick and to Alan for the huge amounts of information and demonstration that we've had. That's been really, really useful. I think it's for a lot of us. So I think that was a very, very useful session. As John mentioned, thank you all for attending and participating as well. Sorry if your questions didn't get answered. You may well be able to find some of the answers on the various sites that have been pointed out already. And if not, we will save the chat and see if we can, put anything else further related to those onto the Facebook page, probably. So yes, this is the last of our weekly sessions for a bit. We're going to be doing one a month in July and August, 2 in September, and then we plan to return to the one a week from October. And we'll be putting those topics up as we agree on them and as we know about them. And we'll still be around answering questions and commenting on things. Vivek, you wanted to say something else?
So I was just going to also say, keep an eye on the Facebook group page. This recording, we hope to be able to put up on a YouTube channel, private one, but the way we share that will be through the Facebook page. Timings depends on how quickly the U3 office are able to deal with it. The comms team are pretty busy and we have to put it through them. But I just wanted to say, we hope a recording of this meeting will be available on a YouTube channel, but we'll be communicating it through the Facebook page. Back to you, Kathy.
Okay.
Well, that was really all to basically thank everybody for coming along, and hope to see you at future sessions. And we may well take up the idea of another SiteWorks session for more of the specialised stuff at another point, if when you've recovered from this one, Nick, which really, I know you say you've done it lots of times, but it was really, really fresh and interesting for us. So thank you very much indeed.
Right, it's been my pleasure. And all the feedback is going to make it a better product.
Thank you. Yes, our next meeting will be on July the 19th, followed by August the 16th. Just to give you an idea, the next 2 dates in July and August.
Thank you very much. Terrific session. Thank you all. And thank you for all the hard work that everyone's put into this. It's really impressive.